Today is one of 3 of the busiest travel days of the year nationwide. TSA expecting to screen roughly 2.5 million people every day now through January 2nd. Hundreds of thousands going through DIA.
That's a lot of people. And after last year's major just debacle with delays and cancellations, some are nervous of a repeat, especially with snow in the forecast. Joining us now is our legal expert, Whitney Traylor, to break this all down and talk about how we as travelers, people who get stuck in this mess, actually have a fair amount of rights to say, hey, you owe us something.
Right.
You need to get us some sort of compensation, especially when we're stuck waiting for 8 hours or can't get a plane for 2 days.
It's a great point, and it's super frustrating and difficult. And I was watching this morning, and I know there's a lot of heavy issues on the legal front, but we had decided to touch on this because there were so many people communicating with us about issues. And so since 2022, the Southwest debacle and the Department of Transportation tightened up a lot of regulations, consumer rights have really increased. Before that, you definitely had rights, but it was somewhat complicated. So if you were on the tarmac for a certain amount of time, if they lost your luggage, all these various things came into play, and it was somewhat complicated. You had to really kind of figure it out. And I had a friend who was a lawyer. Him and his family were on the tarmac. This was before 2022 for, I think, 5 hours. He came out, saw the regs, wrote a letter on the spot, and actually got a check that on the spot.
Hopefully for him and everybody on that plane, right?
I think he was just focused on his family.
Just himself at that moment.
But since the Southwest debacle and everything that happened last year, the Department of Transportation has really tightened up their regulations, and they've advocated for consumers. So if you are having an issue, you can start with the Department of Transportation's website. It walks you through what rights you have. You can also go to the airline's website. They'll walk you through what you can do even against them, because these were some of the changes that were implemented.
You were just talking about that a lot of the airlines were also fined based off of what was going on. Can you walk us through what that is and what happens with that money?
Right. So the biggest fine by far was Southwest, which just got the fine of $140 million, which they actually agreed to. So what that was, the Department of Transportation had started an investigation into a variety of issues that Southwest had, including not having proper technology, their crews. So they almost knew that this was going to happen. And so as a result of that, they made, a lot of these changes. And so Southwest got hit with the $140 million fine, but they're in the process of refunding $600 million. So in total, they're looking at like $750 million. A few years ago, Frontier got hit with about $2.5 million in fines. So this Southwest fine is 30 times larger than any other DOT consumer fine. So this is significant, and it really sends a message to the airline industry. That was the issue. It was to compensate people. A lot of that money went back, but it was also to deter other airlines.
Right. Especially sitting on that tarmac, or you're waiting at the gate and you're like, we got another delay. You can just feel hopeless and helpless, like you can't do anything. But there really are a fair amount of things that you can say, hey, I need some sort of compensation to get back.
That's exactly right. And what's crazy is last year there were almost 17,000 flights canceled. 2 million people were displaced. I've heard Chris tell us his story about trying to get back.
I was in the middle of it too,
Yes. And so he's over there shaking his head. And so, really the issue is, and I actually traveled this summer extensively internationally, and there were a couple times that we had a delay. And I think that some of these changes had already been in place, because they opened the door, they let us off. If it was more than an hour, they had snacks. So you should see some of those changes. So the silver lining of the 2022 situation in these, significant regs is that travel now should be easier. I mean, it's just so much more streamlined, especially in terms of getting refunds and that kind of thing.
Well, that is good news if anyone is headed to the airport today. So, and if it's not, let us know, okay?
Yes,
All right.
reach
Thank
out.
you so much for coming in on a Saturday. We really appreciate it.
All right.